Full name is Sean Carter, while Combs and Celebrity B watched.
But any real man would have to make that choice.
Beyonce on the red carpet with one of the hottest female artists out here, Miss Aaliyah.
Definitely could have been on the level of Beyonce.
Aaliyah's autopsy revealed a shocking detail that might change how we view the tragic events surrounding her death. Evidence suggests she may have begged for her life, a haunting possibility that adds an emotional weight to an already heartbreaking story. For decades, the headlines have buried this single, chilling truth, leaving questions unanswered and her fans searching for closure.
R&B sensation and actress Aaliyah Dana Houghton's life was cut short on the 25th of August 2001 after she and 8 others died in an airplane crash shortly after takeoff from an island in the Bahamas. Nicknamed Baby Girl, the star and her entourage had just completed shooting the music video to her hit single Rock the Boat when the accident happened.
Aaliyah's death wasn't just a tragedy, it was a catastrophe that felt painfully avoidable. The circumstances surrounding her passing continue to spark debate and sorrow, leaving many to wonder how such a promising life could be lost under such preventable conditions.
According to a new book called Baby Girl, better known as Aaliyah, by Kathy Ian Doley, a source is claiming that Aaliyah was hesitant to get on the plane the day of the plane crash. The source says that Aaliyah was given a sleeping pill and carried onto the plane unconscious before the fatal crash happened in the Bahamas. Kingsley Russell, who was 13 at the time, was in the car that drove Aaliyah and her team to the airport for their return flight to Miami. According to Kingsley Russell, they took her out of the van and she didn't even know she was getting boarded on a plane. Russell says she went on that airplane asleep. Now, Aaliyah was in the Bahamas shooting the video for Rock the Boat, and she had just wrapped the video shoot earlier that day. And when it was time to board the plane, Aaliyah was allegedly reluctant to get on after learning that the plane was over its weight limit and informed that the plane would struggle to handle 8 passengers, which included Aaliyah's bodyguard, who weighed over 300 pounds. He said that she grew more and more concerned when they arrived to the airport and she discovered that they would be flying on a small plane. He also says Aaliyah fell asleep in the cab with complaints of a headache as her team tried to sort out the travel situation, and when they returned to the cab, Aaliyah continued to protest. That's when Russell says that one of her team members gave her a sleeping pill, and shortly after that, they boarded the plane, and that is when the tragic incident took place.
She was everywhere. She was definitely could have been on the level of Beyonce.
Hear from those who knew the 22-year-old so well. People right here in Detroit.
Aaliyah's death left fans, family, and others in the music industry wondering, what could have been?
I think about it all the time. Sometimes when I'm playing her songs on the radio now, I just have a moment, just reflect and say, hey, I'm thinking about you, Aaliyah. You know, I know her spirit is doing something right now because she's the kind of spirit that'll last forever.
She could be, you know, considered a queen of her generation. I think she could have been anything she wanted to be.
People have compared her to, she could have been bigger than Beyonce.
Well, that possibility is there for sure. I think that she was on that trajectory for sure.
But on August 25th, 2001, it all ended far too soon. Aaliyah had just finished filming the music video for Rock the Boat in the Bahamas. The shoot was stunning yet grueling, and, as it turned out, fatally complicated. Production was running behind schedule, flights were being rearranged, and a sense of chaos buzzed around the crew's departure. What should have been a moment of triumph quickly unraveled into tragedy.
Cessna crashed.
Has echoed through music, pop culture, and controversy ever since her untimely passing. However, as her autopsy findings resurfaced, they unearthed that a harrowing question: could Aaliyah have foreseen her tragic fate? Could she have begged for a chance to escape it? These chilling possibilities cast a shadow over her legacy, leaving fans and the world grappling with the what-ifs surrounding her final moments.
Plane crash that killed a rising star in the world of music and film. Reaction today after Aaliyah and 8 others were killed when their plane went down. Good evening.
Apparently failed. Along with 8 passengers, Aaliyah, a young Brooklyn native and a talented singer and actress. Jeff Rosten is live in Times Square with more on her life. Jeff.
And Aaliyah had a huge following not only here in New York City but nationwide. Only 22 years old, this pop sensation was a popular singer. She was an actress in some movies recently, even a Grammy nominee. Tonight, her family is in mourning. Fans asking, why her?
In 2001, Aaliyah Dana Houghton was living her moment. She wasn't just an R&B star, she was the star. At just 22 years old, she was redefining the sound of music with her ethereal voice and effortless style. Albums like 1 in a Million and hits like Are You That Somebody weren't merely songs, they were cultural resets, shaping the landscape of music and leaving an indelible mark.
If she'd been on this plane that next day, maybe this all wouldn't have happened. We all wouldn't be here.
According to testimonies years later, Aaliyah was tired and uncomfortable in the moments leading up to the flight. One witness claimed she even resisted getting on the plane, sensing something wasn't right. This unsettling detail adds to the growing sense of foreboding that would tragically prove to be all too real.
On August the 25th, as you heard earlier, 2001, was given a pill before she got on the flight. What have you uncovered about that allegation?
Yeah, the new book, Baby Girl, reveals onto the airplane still asleep and may not have even been aware that she was on the airplane. Now, we should say we don't know what that pill was. It could have been aspirin. Maybe she was just very tired from a long video shoot. And the baggage handler did say that she took it willingly. But it does reveal some new information about those final moments.
The crash was devastating. It happened instantly. The wreckage lay just a few yards off the runway, with the plane shattered, its engine and wings torn apart on impact. Aaliyah and 5 others died immediately, while 3 more passengers succumbed to their injuries shortly after. The scene was one of utter devastation, forever altering the lives of those who loved her and the world that adored her.
The plane was ready for departure. Positioned on runway 27, the west-facing side, Captain Morales powered up his plane and began the takeoff run. The plane would use little over half of the runway to accelerate to takeoff speed. Captain Morales angled his plane into the air and immediately experienced difficulty in controlling the aircraft. In the plane's very short flight, the aircraft peaked at an altitude under 100 feet above the runway. As the plane was highly unbalanced, the Cessna pitched into a high nose-up attitude. The left wing began to drop as not enough lift was being generated by the wings to sustain the excessive weight of the aircraft. This led into a left bank and the nose dropped. In the following seconds, the plane fell to the ground. In a nose-down left bank attitude, the Cessna crashed into the ground in a marshy area just beyond the end of the runway. A fire consumed the wreckage of the aircraft. 8 of the plane's 9 occupants were dead, killed when the plane crashed. There was one initial survivor, Aaliyah's own bodyguard, Scott Gallen. He was found by first responders, but he passed away shortly after the crash. The investigation put the accident down to multiple factors: an overweight plane, improper distribution of the weight, an unqualified pilot, falsified documents, and poor airline management.
At first glance, it seemed like a tragic accident, but when investigators and coroners pieced together the details, the truth became harder to swallow. What appeared to be a random disaster soon revealed unsettling facts, raising more questions than answers about the circumstances surrounding the crash.
Some are wondering whether the crash that took Aaliyah's life was truly an accident. Despite no definitive evidence, some online sleuths believe that Aaliyah's death may have been organized to protect famous faces in the music industry who may have been involved in Diddy's alleged crimes. More intriguing, however, is a detail concerning the moments before the fateful plane crash. According to the Daily Beast, Aaliyah had a known fear of flying. Some question why she would have boarded the private plane, which was small and overloaded with luggage, a contributing factor in the crash. An eyewitness whose family reportedly owned the taxi company Aaliyah and her team used to get to the airport claimed to have seen her being carried onto the plane unconscious.
Did she have time to realize the danger? Did she know her life was slipping away? These haunting questions linger as we try to understand the final moments of Aaliyah's life, hoping for answers that might never fully come.
But then I'm like, the autopsy reports as at then should probably have been able to say if there was in her body or... But
it was the pilots that they were alleging
yeah.
that had the name and its license, to just...
Those chilling questions made headlines when the autopsy report was revisited, casting the crash in an even darker light. Aaliyah's death wasn't just quick and tragic, it may have been terrifying. The revelations added a layer of horror to an already devastating loss, leaving those who loved her grappling with the possibility that her final moments were filled with fear.
Weather conditions were good, so the plane took off around 6:45 p.m. The plane began flying at high speed over the runway 27 and took off quickly. It banked to the left as it reached an altitude of about 40 feet above the runway. Suddenly, the aircraft tilted forward and hit the marshy terrain with its left wing and nose. The aircraft then rolled around before finally coming to a stop about 300 feet before the end of the runway, heading east. The plane had sustained heavy damage, and a fire broke out after the crash. About 135 square meters of the south side of runway 27 was covered with the wreckage. Louis Key, a 25-year-old charter pilot who worked on an aircraft about half a mile away, witnessed the crash. He saw the Cessna crash when it was only 60 to 100 feet above the ground. The man ran to a fire truck and was horrified when he arrived at the crash site. It was an awful sight. Some bodies were so badly disfigured, you couldn't identify them. And two guys were alive, one screaming and screaming for help. He was horribly burned all over, said charter pilot Louis Key. I've seen crashes before, but that was probably one of the worst ones, he said. It was pretty devastating. The aircraft was broken into pieces, and some of the seats were thrown from the aircraft. First responders on the scene found Aaliyah's body about 20 meters from the wreckage. She was immediately deceased. According to a later autopsy report, she had severe burns and head injuries. Just before the collision, she had gone into shock that weakened her heart. The coroner later indicated that even if she had survived the accident, her injuries were so severe that she might never have fully recovered. Aaliyah was only 22 years old.
If the plane crash wasn't heartbreaking enough, the investigation revealed even more disturbing facts. The pilot, Luis Morales, wasn't even qualified to fly the Cessna. He had been hired just days before the flight and shockingly had cocaine in his system at the time of the crash. To make matters worse, Morales had been on probation for possession only 2 weeks prior, raising serious questions about the choices that led to that fateful day.
Before the crash, Aaliyah's pilot, Luis Morales, had been on the wrong side of the law when he got arrested for possession of cocaine and got probation after a traffic stop on July 7th revealed traces of cocaine in his car. The autopsy further revealed traces of cocaine and alcohol. Shockingly, this pilot was not certified to fly the ill-fated plane. Luis Morales was on probation for theft charges in the same period. Similar criminal charges in November of the previous year included stealing pencils, pens, a cigarette lighter adapter, panel lights, and aircraft tools. He got 3-year probation with no adjudication, meaning that his record would have been cleared if he had completed probation. Luis Morales was often in trouble with the authorities and was on probation when flying this plane. Uncertified. The reports of the plane crash exposed that Luis Morales was not certified to fly the 10-seat Cessna. While he was a pilot, he was not certified to fly this specific plane safely. More shocking news revealed that the pilot was only trained for 3 weeks to fly this size of an aircraft before the fatal crash. This information was revealed to the public by colleagues who had trained him. Luis worked for Blackhawk International Airways and had been placed at the controls 2 days before the accident.
This wasn't just negligence, it was recklessness. Authorities later confirmed that the plane was 700 pounds overweight when it took off. Combined with Morales' lack of certification, it's clear that this flight was a ticking time bomb. Aaliyah and her team were unknowingly placed in an impossible situation, with factors stacking against them from the very moment they boarded.
The plane was overweight. To break down the specifics, according to the accident report, the Cessna 402 has a maximum takeoff weight of 6,300 pounds, or 2,000. By the investigation that, in this case, the weight of the plane, the 9 occupants exceeding the recommended 8, the cargo and baggage of the passengers, and the fuel that was in the tanks, came in at 941 pounds, or 426 kilograms over the maximum takeoff weight limit. To further note, it is likely that the actual weight of the plane was thought to be even greater than this. One piece of luggage was never found at the crash site and was not factored into this calculation. But the plane being overweight was just the beginning of the issue. This doesn't explain why the plane crashed. The distribution of that weight is a critical factor to know before we actually look at the events of the very short accident flight.
But here's where it gets even more tragic. Before the crash, some crew members allegedly voiced concerns about the overloaded plane. However, the pressure to leave the island, wrap up the shoot, and get back to work took precedence. Even more heartbreaking, according to one account, Aaliyah herself wasn't even fully aware that she was boarding the doomed flight. The sense of urgency and chaos overshadowed the critical warnings, sealing their fate.
Before they could leave, Lewis had some disagreement with the crew because he warned them that there was too much weight on board for a safe flight. But because they had waited so long, they were going to leave anyway. According to several sources, Aaliyah was known to be a nervous flyer. On this fateful day, she was very anxious about getting on the plane. She had a headache and felt uncomfortable because of her nerves, so she decided to spend some time in the back of the cab that took them to the airport. As she sat there, one of the crew members approached her to ask what was wrong. When she expressed her concerns about the plane and the flight, she said she did not want to be on the flight.
In the months following Aaliyah's death, her family, understandably devastated, took legal action. They filed lawsuits against the video production company, the airline, and others involved. While settlements were eventually reached, no amount of money could undo the damage. The loss of Aaliyah, both as a beloved artist and a cherished family member, could never be compensated for, leaving a void that no legal resolution could fill.
Oh God. Believe it or not, I was thinking about her music. I was thinking about because I worked on it every day, very obsessively.
person she is.
Aaliyah's death remains one of the most heartbreaking tragedies in music history, marked by a series of preventable errors and devastating consequences. As we reflect on her legacy, we remember not only the artist who changed the face of music, but also the life lost far too soon.
It was a catastrophe that felt avoidable.
Though the questions surrounding her final moments may never be fully answered, Aaliyah's impact continues to resonate, reminding us of the potential snuffed out that fateful day. Her memory lives on in the music, the culture, and the hearts of those who loved her.